Hello and welcome to this episode of I Just Need to Talk About This Film. Obviously, it's not a film this week. We're talking about a TV show which has just dropped on Netflix this week called Cursed. And it's just opening up the discussion about fantasy and female representation as well as people of colour in general. I am joined again by Katie.
Oh, God. You can't get rid of me, darling.
Can't. I've even had to drag her away from her masters just to be here.
Give me a break, honestly. Good.
She is the fantasy legend. She knows a lot.
Oh.
Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings. She knows.
Lord
She'll talk about it.
God,
She'll talk about it for days. So, have you watched
I'll
Cursed
cry.
yet?
Sorry. Well, I started watching it, and then I fell asleep, I must admit. But the thing
That kind
is,
of just says everything, though.
the thing is, I was first introduced to Curse, saying it's the new Game of Thrones, but on Netflix, and it's going to be that kind of budget and everything.
Yeah.
And then when it came out and I saw more about it, I just wasn't drawn to it. I wasn't like, okay,
No.
oh my God, I need to watch it. Whether or not that's just because I'd rather be watching other things or I'm just not in the zone to start a new show like that, I don't know. But yeah, it just didn't really appeal to me that much for some reason. But yeah, I gave it a go, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, I remember the first advertisement coming out and it, like, to, like, be that person. When I was, like, working, when the film industry was happening, I remember I worked with a couple of people who had just come off it. And they were like, oh, yeah, it's going to be really good. And I was, like, kind of excited, you know. I was like, oh, my God, there's a fantasy show coming out that's, like, about a female.
Yeah.
And then I heard about it was, like, Arthur. And I was like, oh, again. But then at the same time, because it was a new take and it was about her origin of the Lady in the Lake, I was kind of excited. I was like, oh, finally, a new take on it instead of it just always being Arthur and Merlin and the knights and yay. But then, like, the first trailer came out and it was really epic. And I was like, oh, my God, this looks so good. I'm so excited. Female fantasy,
Yeah.
yay. And it was filmed in Britain. Way. Love it. And then I watched it. I was like, oh, this is really boring. This is so boring. And also, just to, like, go back to, I absolutely hate that everyone compares everything to Game of Thrones these days. Yeah. I'm gonna, just like, one of my husbands, Henry, who plays The Witcher, there was one interview that he came out about, and because he's a proper fan, like, he was a fan of The Witcher in the first place, wasn't he? Hence why he
Henry Cavill.
basically, yeah, he went for that role. He was like, I need this role, like, this is mine. But the thing is, though, there was so much before Game of Thrones, and Game of Thrones, has pushed the fantasy TV show, and it has made fantasy more mainstream, that people watch it, and it's opened that fantasy realm a bit more. But then at the same time, fantasy still can be quite a niche, that people are coming into these shows and going, oh, well, it's not Game of Thrones. And I'm like, well, no, it's not Game of Thrones at all. Like, we shouldn't compare everything to Game of Thrones. At the end of the day, sometimes it's good that it's not Game of Thrones, because can we all remember how Game of Thrones finished? And also, are we talking about Game of Thrones anymore? No.
Yeah. But depends.
Well, no, like, we all just kind of... Yeah. I found that it kind of was like one of them shows that everyone hyped, and then the last series happened. Like, I was already getting a bit... Like, the last two to three series is, like, it kind of, like... When they lost the books, they, like, the quality was going down and it was going faster. And you could tell that they were, like, the writers were trying to get onto Star Wars instead, and that's fallen through. So I think that's karma. And they weren't putting as much work into it. And what I say is the ending, I'm not mad at the ending in the sense of, in the novels, it's very clear that Daenerys is going to turn, I think, but they did it so fast that we really should have had another 2 series to allow that progression to happen, that it just pissed everyone off that it was this really random rampage. And anyway, that's going on to Game of Thrones. But I just think comparing it to Game of Thrones all the time is just like kind of negative, because it's like, what about Game of Thrones are we comparing it to? Like the first 2 series, or
it can't compete. Yeah, it can't compete on so many levels. You know,
it's like saying, well, a franchise for films isn't Harry Potter. Well, no, it's not.
yeah, exactly. It's you're sort of setting up whatever you're comparing it with for failure. You know.
Yeah. I do just really quickly want to say sorry if you can hear my fan. It's really hot in Britain. I'm sorry.
It's not really hot in Britain, but
it's summer.
But we feel it's like it's bloody boiling, even if it's just the slightest change.
Yeah. But
absolutely.
No, I think the show, it didn't bring me in when I started, as in going back to Curse. It didn't bring me in at all.
Yeah.
I started watching it and I was like, especially the first episode, it had aspects of Merlin, as in the BBC show.
Yes.
Like, it had this sort of feel to it that I was like, maybe I'll like this. Maybe it is a little bit more tween, like not teen, like tween, and like, you know, a bit younger. Maybe younger kids could watch it. And then obviously the themes in it are not compatible to that. Like, there's, you know, there's implied sexual scenes, there's murder, there is blood.
Yeah, see, that's the thing with me as well. For the bit that I saw, there wasn't sort of a continuity of who this was for exactly. I was very because of the opening and everything. I was like, oh, it's like watching Merlin, that kind of realm, but also budget and scale, whatever you want to call it. And then and then the kid just sort of swears, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, where are we?
It's all through their head. Oh, okay. It's a weird one. It's a weird one with that.
Yeah, I think that's like what I said in the review I put out. I said the thing is, it's like the departments didn't match the budgets. Like, the marketing was incredible. The first trailer that came out was like this really long shot of like her village being rampaged. Sorry if that's just... Oh, by the way, there I spoil it. Like, I won't spoil it too much, but I mean, as in for the first like few, you know, if anyone is watched, like, don't know anything about Curse at all, I'm just gonna say like the odd little bit, but it's not like, I won't tell you the end of
groundbreaking. It's not groundbreaking.
It's a groundbreaker. It's like village rampage. Like, you always fantasy shows is always
in those days.
You just always have to have one of them scenes. But it's like the departments just didn't match up. Like, they put so much money into marketing, and then like the sets sometimes are really good, and like, can you remember in like Merlin, like there will sometimes be a shot of like the village and like the castle in the background, but when you like rewatch it, you sometimes can just tell the castle was CGI. And like they've kind of like put it on. There's like the odd scene like that. There's like the odd like shot of a boat, and you can tell the boat has been like put on. And but I'm not mad at that. It's just sometimes you like feel like, oh, can you remember like what was it called? Troy. It was on BBC a while back. Was it Helen of Troy? And it was
Helen of Troy. Yeah.
I tried to binge it and I couldn't. I just was not interested. It was so whitewashed. It looked like Roman Britain, not lovely Greece, you know. It was
right.
And also to say that it was meant to be Troy, like the city of Troy, which was meant to be the most grandest city in that legend, you know, that time. It literally just looked like it just looked like the tiniest little village in Cornwall. Like, it was awful, and you could just tell it was filmed in Britain. And that's like how I kind of felt with Curse. Like, I felt like there was odd bits that I was like, this is definitely Britain, which is absolutely fine for this sort of fantasy, because that is where we are technically meant to be.
Medieval Britain.
Yeah, but you could just tell that they hadn't put loads of work into it. But then there was other shots, like when they were in like abbeys and stuff, where it's this beautiful actual on location set. So sometimes it just like episode to episode, scene to scene, it wasn't clicking. The costumes though, I find were pretty. I find there were a good mix of fantasy versus like what actually the 15th, 14th century would have been like. One note I did notice that someone had put out, this is for history buffs out there, obviously the story of Arthur and Merlin was set around 14th, 15th century. We obviously don't know, because it's like, was it real, was it not? We do not know.
Yeah, it's more like a legend, isn't it?
Yeah, but there is a lot of aspects from the 10th century in this show. Like, there's stuff that should not have been happening. So whoever was in control of that department did not do it right. That it was just the odd, apparently it's like the odd thing about Europe that they say, or oh, this king or this something, and some of the costume designs and set designs and stuff it's like a really weird mishmash between the 4th century and the 10th century, which doesn't really add up. So maybe that's an added reason of why it all felt a bit weird and didn't feel like it was put together well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I quite liked the hair. I know that's sort of a very like small aspect of it, but I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah.
I know it's like a really, really small bit, but that's the slightest detail I really appreciate when it goes down to hair and makeup. Costumes, yeah, but in these things they kind of get overshadowed, don't they? Costumes usually overshadows topics, but I think the hair made, I don't know, I just want to talk about hair, sorry.
No, it's gorgeous. Her hair, like the main character's hair, of
gorgeous.
But
just
then like just gorgeous. That's it. Like
gorgeous.
To be fair, she wow, what a spoiler. She lets it down at one point. And it's
oh my gosh,
gorgeous. It is gorgeous. She like gorgeous. And at one point she has like a little flower crown, and I was like, wow, princess cute. The queen we all need. The actress of oh my god, what's her name? Catherine.
Oh yeah,
I'm really bad at this, aren't I? I probably should get IMDb. Yeah, because her sister is the actress in the After series, which she was obviously from 13 Reasons Why. Oh yeah, Catherine Lanford, who plays Nick.
Yes.
I thought she was good. Like her and Devon Terrell, who played Arthur. I think they both were okay. But then this is when I can't really say an actor is good or bad on the basis of one show, because you don't know.
Oh no, God no.
Anything. You don't know how fast they were having to do takes. You don't know if they were like really in the mindset or what. Because a couple of the reviews did kind of say it was bad acting, and I do think some of the more older British actors who you would expect to be in these sort of fantasy shows didn't bring their A game, because they were just the same sort of character as always. Like, they were just like, I am the king and I am going to rampage this place. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, mate. Okay, brilliant.
Yeah.
It's just... Oh, and then, like, going back to, like, the style and the feel of this...
Yeah.
So you know how like we have Robin Hood or Merlin or the Musketeers and stuff like that from BBC. They were episode stories, right? So every episode would be a different story, and of course there's like the odd bit of thread to like come to an arc in end. And I think that's where this show felt weird, because I felt like it could have been an episodic show, but it's not. And again, that's where it felt a bit, because there are bits where it's within one episode, and like it could have blended a bit well, like The Witcher. Like The Witcher's like an arc in, but every episode's like an individual story,
its own thing.
Yeah, and I think it could have blended a bit better like that. But then, I think for me, I can just definitely tell that this show was rushed. Like, the book came out like early last year or late 2018, I can't really remember, and it was a graphic novel. Netflix commissioned it straight away. There isn't even a second novel. Like, we have ended where the first novel finished. So we're like waiting for the second novel. Apparently it is coming out. Apparently it hasn't even been approved for a second series yet. I think they're waiting for these reviews and are people watching it. But The Guardian, who is like my favourite, one of my favourite people to like look at their reviews, because they're so harsh. It's brilliant. They gave it 2 out of 5 stars. And the title is The King Arthur Prequel No One Was Crying Out For. Brilliant. Love you. I love it. But they just said it's meant to be the early stages of The Lady in the Lake, which this is why I'm so annoyed, because I feel like the Lady in the Lake is such a random character. She is literally this mystical character who is like guarding the sword. And you don't really know much about her apart from she is a lady in the lake. And I just was so excited to find out how she gets there, you know, what's her backstory. I didn't know Arthur was going to actually really be in it, if that makes sense. I just thought, you know what I mean? I didn't know that her and Arthur knew each other before then. And this is really a spoiler. Maybe I'm just stupid. But when they said this is a retelling, it's a retelling. Stuff is happening that is not the Arthur story you know. So Arthur isn't the prince, or he's not going to be the king. His sister is actually his sister, and she's in a nunnery. Merlin is just... Okay, Merlin's probably the only one who's still the same. And then there's like the odd character name that you will hear, but they're not the character you know at all. And it's one of them like, okay, this is just fan fiction then. Like this isn't a prequel to King Arthur, or just telling us like a side story of how the Lady in the Lake happened. It is literally rehashing the story that we know. For what? Like, why did we need this? Like, why mess completely with a story that's like in Britain? It's like, well, we don't get taught it as much, but you know, like it was a legendary story that got told. It was never written down. It was just a legendary story that got passed on. The same as Robin Hood. And it's like, was it real? Who knows? Like,
we don't know. I mean, I think if we can go back to sort of talking about comparing almost to some of the BBC shows like Merlin, Camelot, Robin Hood. I mean, when you think back as well, that was before subscription on demand. That was before Netflix, and you sort of tune in weekly on your Saturday nights rather, with your tea. And I think, and do you know what? I feel like hearing you talk about talking about Cursed, I'm just sort of thinking, well, do you know what? What's probably missing is the fact that, I mean, to compare it to those past shows, it's kind of, well, irrelevant in its own right, whether it's down to like, in Merlin, I didn't care that those castles looked shit because it was okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And but because we're in this sort of day and age where we're our own critic, really. Everyone's
I've
a critic.
Lost you then.
Can you hear me?
Sorry. Yeah, I can hear you now. I just lost you for a moment.
No worries. I basically my point is, I feel in this digital day we're in, we're binge watching, it really has affected how potentially the show's received, thinking that if they go off of the past BBC shows which were seen weekly, then perhaps, I don't know, that's just me speculating.
No, you're right. I think also it goes into the fact that these BBC shows were, like you said, they went in the same line as like Doctor Who and stuff. We would get, as like us being British kids who have been raised up with it, it was a Saturday night event. We didn't have anything else to watch. Not that we were in the good old days with only 3 channels, but we did literally have CBBC. No, we're not old. We had CBBC, CBeebies, ITV. Like when we were young, when we were younger, BBC Two on a Sunday would actually show CBBC shows for a while, and they don't do that anymore because there's no need for it. Everyone watches iPlayer. So I think we have definitely lost this grand Saturday night fantasy show.
Nostalgia.
Yeah, or sci-fi fantasy show of nostalgia. And these shows, to say that both of us are in the TV and filmmaking career, these shows did make us, but we haven't like rewatched them and gone, oh, that is the aim. But oh my god, if I could work on Doctor Who, that would be a life goal for me. Like we used to watch the behind the scenes on the BBC.
Oh my god,
channel.
me too. BBC Three was
yeah,
BBC
but they did it for Merlin as well. They used to do it for Merlin and Robin Hood as well. Robin Hood was a little bit older. I do remember it as being a bit older.
Yeah,
and I think it used to be put
Robin
on
Hood came from this.
Wasn't it like 7:30 instead of like 6:30 or something like that? It was like just a little bit older. And I think we've kind of lost that. Like, just going back to Helen of Troy, like Helen of Troy, you could tell they were trying to make it that sort of show, and it flopped so badly because it didn't give us anything new. And then someone like me, who is a bit of a geek when it comes to these sort of stories, it hurt me that they didn't actually show the true telling, because okay, don't want to trash Troy, because oh my god, Troy is one of the best films out there, and it's gorgeous. And I love it so much. Oh yeah, and this is when I say that this is artistic license at its best. That film is brilliant, but it isn't the true story at all. Like, not that there was a true story, but it was a legend, because Helen of Troy was promised to Paris. I had Prince in my head then. I was like, Prince Paris. And
Paris.
Is it Paris? Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh my god, my brain's gone. And so Aphrodite literally kidnapped her and put her on his boat. So when she and she like basically was like, what? I'm happily married with children. What is going on? And I think she has compassion for Paris after a while, because he gets injured and she's like helps him, and stuff like that. But there's no love there. Like, she does not want to be with him. She wants to go back to her husband. And I just hate the fact that in so many retellings she's kind of portrayed as this, like, she started the war. Like, she was like, yeah, I'm just gonna leave my kid and just and my husband and go off with this young nice guy for no reason. And I think the Helen of Troy TV show on BBC just really upset me, because it kept with that. And one of the main things that really, 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 really annoyed me was Helen of Troy had blonde hair, because in Greek, like, even now, blonde is rare as hell. And if you have blonde hair, it's a sign that you're like a goddess, especially in the stories, because she was the daughter of Zeus. Like, she literally was like a demigod, like, so where's her blonde hair? Like, I know that, and it just upset me like so much. Yeah, it just. And this is the thing, I don't think these BBC retellings work anymore, because they don't understand what it is we want. Because Merlin definitely was not the story of Arthur. Like, if it was really the story of Arthur, he would have cheated on Gwen many times. And with his sister, to like really add that into that, it's incestuous in the actual story. And I think everyone always misses that out. I'm okay with you missing that out.
I wonder why I missed that out. I mean,
I
think I could guess.
I've got to somehow bring this back to Cursed. I think they just missed something, that this could have been such a good show for a weekly thing, and I think it just doesn't make sense to me of why it was commissioned so fast. You can tell it was made fast. And it just upsets me that, like, where are our female lead shows? Like, where are they? I want them.
Well, this is it. I mean, mentioning Doctor Who, obviously we've got a female lead, but Doctor Who's just been on this downward spiral, really.
It's so upsetting.
Yeah, I mean, but if you think anyway, with David Tennant years, even Christopher Eccleston's, and then a bit of Matt Smith's, you know, the female, what are they called? Assistants? Companions, yeah. That's the one. They're just, at a lot of points, they were just as big as the Doctor in itself, and their backstory and all that.
Yeah. It's not like that anymore on Doctor Who at all.
No.
Like, that is one of the biggest complaints everyone has, is the assistants. Like, they do not... Then they have no backstory. They have no arc themselves. They... Like, look at Rose, you know, she was our main girl. She was legendary. The one who got us into it. And when we first meet her, she is, like, a shop assistant, which is very normal in the UK. She works in retail. Yeah. And then she meets the Doctor, and her arc is massive. Like, she, you know, she becomes stronger, she becomes independent, she becomes witty, she becomes... where she can do stuff without the Doctor. And... you know, of course she loves him, but like, and every companion has an arc, and the new series hasn't missed that out a lot. Their stories are so PC that Doctor Who has always been quite PC, but it's in your face. This is the meaning of this episode, and it's like, well, we didn't need that. You didn't need to literally have a moment in the TARDIS where the Doctor reflects on what's just happened and been like, life finds a way, because it's like, that's not... I didn't need that. Just... Yeah,
but the thing is with Doctor Who, I think it's just gone... Like, I remember when it was more horror, in a way, scary. Scary. Yeah. And when my mum was younger, she'd always tell me how she hid behind the sofa when, you know, the Daleks came or whatever. Yes. And to tell a kid that now, they'd be like, what you're on about?
100%.
You know, from the material of Doctor Who that they watch. And I don't know what's gone wrong with Doctor Who, to be perfectly honest.
That could be a whole new podcast.
Yeah.
Like,
I know, exactly.
Well, I'm a Doctor Who fan. Like, I have a Doctor Who tattoo, I have it in my room, like, Doctor Who's my bag. Like, I love it. There is many reasons why it's like gone a bit rubbish. Like, change in writer is always the main one. There's
always that growing pains.
Yeah, and then they introduced too many characters straight away. Like, we should have only had like 1 or 2 assistants, not 4/3. They haven't had arcs of their own. We should have an episode where it's usually just the Doctor, and then usually you get an episode that's just the assistant. We haven't had that. It's the aliens are usually compassionate or horror. They've neither of them things. It's like they literally just go, and then this alien half looks like a fly, half look like a lizard, and they're not getting the meaning of it. Like, that, it doesn't matter what the hell the alien looks like, you know, or whatever it is. And then sometimes it's not even an alien. Sometimes it's like a robot. I don't know. Like, the new writer is just not hitting the mark. He doesn't understand what it was about Doctor Who, and that's why, I mean, he's making it so PC. So it's like, there'll be like a character, and then it'll be like, oh, it actually just needed some love, and we should embrace all races. And it's like, yeah, Doctor Who has always given us them sort of messages, but you don't need to actually tell us at the end of the episode. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, remember, one of the key companions of the Doctor was Martha. Bloody loved Martha. I mean, tough act to follow, you know, from Rose, but, you know, obviously she was a woman of colour.
She was a good...
But also Mickey as well. Mickey with Rose. That was another one.
It's like, obviously BBC, we're on about it, British shows here. This is Curse is actually obviously an American commissioned, made in Britain. But I think BBC has always been quite progressive. I'm not always saying that they've always been the best, because they've, you know, we always have room for improvement. But I think Doctor Who and right, this is where we're going to mix between fantasy and sci-fi. Sci-fi has always been very progressive, with a lot, like it, but then with story arcs and stuff like that. But it hasn't been very progressive with people of color. Like, that's why Black Panther was such a big thing, because it was like, it's never really happened before. And even though we have like a lot of sci-fis with Will Smith in it, it's one of them, but then try and say one without Will Smith in it, you know, for films. And then Doctor Who and BBC TV shows has always been quite, you know, we have Captain Jack. Like, as a bisexual woman, I honestly do think little things like that were the reason I was okay with knowing who I was, and it was okay that I liked females and males, or anyone who was attractive, because Captain Jack was like that, you know. So but then that's where Doctor Who is kind of mixed into this fantasy and sci-fi, and then it's like, then bring it back over to like Game of Thrones, and then The Witcher, and now Cursed. It's like we are slowly getting progression, but the fantasy stories are always the same sort of fantasy stories. They're medieval, dragons, and magic. Whereas our like South African or Australian or Indian fantasy stories, which it's one of them, I don't like it when people go, oh, it won't, you know, people won't watch that in Western, because it's like, well, you watch Black Panther. Black Panther was set in Africa, a fantasy place in Africa, but you know, it's all down to marketing. It's down to the script.
Oh yeah,
it's down to casting, and it's also, are the stories out there? I'm pretty sure they are. It's just you know, going into a bookstore.
Yeah, the thing is, it does raise that question of, okay, the inclusion of a black character, whether you just and to what extent you sort of whitewash them with, and you know, so for an example, in Cursed, Arthur is played by a man of colour,
as well as
which,
his sister,
you know,
because that makes sense.
They're related, and obviously, as in terms of it being as a legend, King Arthur typically white. And I suppose it's that question, okay, it's not the case of having that representation of people of colour by just putting them as, we'll just put them as in white roles, you know, typically. There we go, there's that representation. That's not the right way for me. That's not the right way of doing
it's not.
it. I mean, I think of, you know, Wonder Woman and Amazonians. I love that representation because of just how, although it is, you know, fictional, but based on some sort of mystical and
fantasy
anthology or whatever, it's still, it's keeping almost at the core that it's not whitewashed, basically, you know, the Amazonians, and that they are doing, they fight how they fight, their connection with the earth. It's all very believable, as opposed to a black man playing a white man's role. You know?
They're meant to be, you know, like they're meant to be they're females. They are like the representation of female warriors. So there is nothing to, and they are literally made of clay. Like, so there is no evidence for them to not be white, Asian, black. You know, so there should be a mix of races within these women. So it works, and then obviously then it goes into the World War, and that obviously was male heavy. It is white heavy. There are, though, obviously we know from our not our history lessons, because we weren't told this, we had a lot of Indian troops and a lot of black troops as well. It's very heavily white male, but we, you know what I mean, that representation is kind of missed, but I can forgive it in the sense that we are focused on such a small group of men in this then film. And like India, just going into like the war area, like 1917 really represents that quite well without it being in your face. they just, you know what I mean, they show it naturally, and I think that's always where it comes down to. It's showing it naturally. But with fantasy, it's fantasy. Does it, you know, does it matter that this is a black guy? Does it matter that this is an Asian woman? Does it matter? It's fantasy.
Yeah, exactly. But obviously it depends on what where that fantastical story has come from. You know, obviously with the King Arthur, the legend of that, you know, that's very...
Yeah, it's very British.
White.
Well, England, really. Like, we'd always say British, but, like, you know, like the dragon and all that. Like, let's forget about Wales. Like, it's not them. It's us.
Not yet.
But then obviously, like, it also, female-led fantasy is not really there. Like, Game of Thrones, I would say, is kind of balanced, but then at the same time it ended, and okay, Sansa became the Queen of the North, but you know, Jon Snow, Tyrion, like, they were the main characters in a sense, and like obviously there's been like evidence that actually Tyrion is the main character in the novels, like, because he is the most heavily followed character, but that's just because he interacts with so many other characters. And Game of Thrones, obviously the novels, not the show, like, is one of the best ways to show this really well-developed mix of females, males, different skin tones, which is natural for that world because he made it up. But then I think this is where fantasy is more than just medieval 14th, 15th century. Like, and breaking through that, like, it's not happening. Like, we are not... It's so stuck in this one time frame of, well, there was dragons and magical stuff, and, well, there's more to it than that. We can get so many different areas. Like, even like Airbender is a fantasy, you know, the Golden Compass is a fantasy. Golden Compass is a TV show. That's amazing. It was a really good show. Then thinking about it secondly, it was kind of whitewashed, but then I think when it's Britain, any time in the last 100 years, I think this isn't me just being like, throw a black character in, but you can, like, and let's not forget, like, England we are, like, heavily Pakistan, we are heavily Indian, we are, you know, Asian, like, and I think sometimes it's literally looking at the statistics and going, well, in England, 15% of the population is a completely different skin tone than white. So at least some of the background actors and a few of the main characters, even if they're just like side talking characters, should be another race. And it just is so annoying that it's always so white. And then I can just sometimes just think, if I was a black person in England watching this, I would be like internally screaming, and that is what's happening. But I can only really talk as a female point of view when it comes to that, and I just listen and understand from other people how they feel.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's difficult because, you know, I think there's definitely a market that we need to explore in the fantasy genre of exploring fantasies from other cultures, and I think that's what primarily is the issue here. As I think I said to you before, so think of Japanese, Chinese cultures, the Eastern Asian cultures, and their fantasies are often adapted as animes and animated series, as you said, you know, the Airbender and that series. Although it did get tried to be made into a film.
Yeah, we don't talk about the film. That was so whitewashed as well. It was awful.
It was, but it flopped just as a film anyway. But it was shit. Anyway, moving on. But yeah, and I think that's quite an interesting thing. I mean, whether that's Japan and putting their ownership on their stories and saying, we're going to tell it through anime. Because let's face it, it usually shows that we receive in England are usually sort of translated from animes. I mean, not all the time, but for the most part. So,
I think
sorry.
I think it just goes into, because as in England and Britain, we get a lot of shows from America as well, and I think it just is upsetting when you go to America, or you just America's very heavily mixed. There's different places, have different people and different cultures, but I think when you then realise how heavily white a lot of these shows are, it's not okay anymore that they're not commissioning shows that are breaking away from that norm that has been going since like 1940, and it shouldn't anymore, because where's black representation, where's Asian representation, where's Indian representation or Mexican representation, and especially in America, it's like, where is it? Like, they have their own legends, they have their own stories. Let's put some on the screen, especially on Netflix.
I mean, it's fair enough trying to be accurate with your representation in terms of in Britain in say 1066, the Battle of Hastings. I mean, it was white people fighting white people. I mean, I appreciate that. That's if you want to stay true to history in that respect. But as you say, why do we have to keep telling sort of the same sort of fantastical
100%.
legends? It's just like, okay, cool.
When you look at sorry, you can
go for it.
Well, I was just going to say, when you look at how old the history of film and TV is, we have hit a point now that I think we are bored of all these same stories. Why are we having another thing about bloody Henry VIII? Why? Why are we having another thing about Merlin? Why are we having another thing about Robin Hood? They are all male, white male. I want something bloody new. As a female, I want to see a kick-ass female on the bloody screen. Come on. It's like there are them stories out there. You just didn't teach us them.
Yeah. To be fair, I would say a commendable show for kick-ass women that was also fairly accurate to the representation of the time, and that's the show Vikings, and representation of Lagertha. Oh my God, what a woman. And I mean, I'm not completely up to date, but I know that recently she's kind of stepped into the role, apart from the son of Ragnar, but she sort of stepped into that legendary warrior role. And I think it's brilliant, because obviously Viking women did fight, and there's no way of sugarcoating that. And I think that's a brilliant representation of a woman in a fantastical show, whether or not I don't know, it's pushing on the boundaries of it being a fantastical show, because obviously you've got Norse mythology mixed within the show with historical references. But yeah, for the most part, you could say it's sort of a fantasy genre-ish.
Yeah, of course. It's like, that's the thing though. It's also obviously with fantasy and sci-fi history can blend together a lot.
Oh yeah.
Then
I would say dive.
Yeah, I would say fantasy and history dip a lot, and then obviously sci-fi and fantasy dip a lot, because Doctor Who, is it fantasy or is it sci-fi? Well, it's both. Sure. And I think Cursed has just let me down when I was so excited to watch a female lead. And it was a female lead, and I did like her, and I don't want to spoil something, but it's just it's like, why is it we get characters that have to be I don't want to spoil it, but it's like, why? I can't say. I'm trying to think of an example that won't spoil it.
I mean, you could say spoiler here,
I know, but I don't want to spoil it for you.
Oh, it's okay. I'm not bothered.
Are you sure? Okay, so
I'm sure, darling.
the main thing that annoys me is when a character, especially female, who are like kick ass, blah blah blah, and then they're related to someone famous, or they're related to someone. Oh, that's where they got their power from, or that's. And I'm trying to think of other examples, but like our main girl is obviously related to someone famous that gives her the power that she has, and it pissed me off because I was like, why couldn't she have just been powerful on her own? Yeah. Oh, Star Wars, that's where my brain was going. You know, like how in Rey, like everyone was expecting her to be like a bloody Skywalker, and it was like, no, let her just be her own person. Like but they obviously JJ set that up, and I don't blame him, but obviously it all new Star Wars fucked up, and it's just like, you know, it was just this thing of who's her origins, and it was like, well, why? Because she couldn't have just been on her own, and then obviously she was bloody priority, and I hated it. But yeah, that's it, weirdly enough, that kind of reminded me of this. Like, it was like,
to be fair, yeah,
there was
put those together.
Yeah, that it's like, oh, for fuck's sake, she had to be someone's daughter, or like, you know, oh, she had to be someone's granddaughter, or she had to be related to someone. You know, it's just like, why? And then, you know, at the end of the day, this was meant to be a story about how the Lady of the Lake became the Lady of the Lake. I'm not seeing that at all, apart from the fact that she's always with a sword. And I'm just annoyed that this is a retelling of Arthur, not in the realm of Arthur, but we are focusing on a different character that has never had the spotlight before, because I assumed she was the Lady in the Lake like 50 years before Arthur was even born. Like, and maybe this is me just not being brushed up on the Arthur story, but she, you know, I only ever known her as a woman in a lake, and they go and be like, can I have the sword? And then she tests them a few times, and then they get the sword, you know. So I was like,
well, by that respect, it's just an adaptation, isn't it? You know, by any sort of perhaps there were too many elements to it that were like, okay, let's try it. We're going to have a huge female lead and representation. Then okay, and then we're also going to put in person of color to play King Arthur. Okay, and then we're also going to do this. Like, maybe they just try to tick so many boxes in order to hope that it's different, when actually it's not really that. They haven't really achieved much with it.
It really doesn't make sense that it was commissioned, because the book don't even have good reviews. It literally doesn't. Well, it's not even a book, it's a graphic novel. It doesn't have good reviews. And that's the other thing, like, they brought in really not random, because it's a graphic novel, they've tried to keep it in a little bit with like the opening credit scene, and the transitions between scenes are sometimes like this like watercolor animation. And there's like this one scene at one point where she's like there's loads of blood, and the blood splats on the screen, and then it like fills up the screen with blood, and then goes completely red. And I did not like that, because I'm watching a show about a fantasy story. I'm in it, like I am, you know what I mean? You get immersed, and then doing that breaks you out of the immersion. And I know it was the end of an episode, but it just really annoyed me, because I was like, I don't want to know a camera was there, you know? I don't want to know that she's literally just splattered blood onto the camera. Like, why did you do that to me? And so they brought in really random elements of these graphic novels, and I don't know, it's like, I will watch the second series if a second series comes out, and I'm not slating any of the actors. Okay, the acting wasn't the best at times, the costume wasn't the best at times. There's this one actor that you will recognise, he was in Game of Thrones. He very clearly has white paint on his hair to make him look like he has white grey hair. It's really weird. Like,
oh, bless.
Yeah. And it's like, why did you do that? Why could he just not have had a wig? Like, but it's not worst. It's just, I don't know. It's like there's elements that's like really low budget, elements that are high budget, this random graphic novel style, but then, or is this a BBC, Saturday night thing, or is this X-rated? Is this not X? It was just this like really big bundle of everything, and I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
Oof. Hate it when my mum said that to me. Yeah, I mean, I feel frustration, and it's although I've only watched a bit, I can appreciate
it didn't get me straight away.
Grinding effect. Yeah,
it does pick up. I'll be honest, it does pick up towards the end.
Yeah. But I think it's, aside from the show of the substance of a show itself, I think obviously it goes deeper than that, and it struck a topic which, when you look into it, like I've been looking into fantasy shows that are kind of outside of that, either sci-fi, as you say, or medieval Britain, England rather, and it's the same sort of thing. And then when you look at other fantasy shows or films, it's not solely a fantasy, is it?
No.
Do you know what I mean? It's mixed, and I don't know. I think the genre in itself is struggling.
And I think it is because, no offense to Game of Thrones, but it did bring it into the forefront for everyone to suddenly love fantasy, and fantasy is a niche. Like, it was Dungeons and Dragons and nerds and the bottom of their garages, and don't listen to him. He's a nerd who reads, fantasy, and fantasy is so immersive, and it's meant to be like so out of this world that you can just get lost in it. And I think it is just, I don't know if it's working. The Witcher got negative reviews, but I absolutely loved it. Like, I think it was brilliant. I thought it was brilliant
as well.
Yeah,
and I actually thought, although obviously it was based on a male protagonist, there's a lot of focus on the females within the show, and in fact, I can't remember what episode it was where it was just focused on one of the females, pretty much, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I can't remember. But yes, and obviously, but there was also representation of women of colour in that show as well.
Yeah, but then it's still like, but not enough. But that's because it's not a fantasy about that culture, and I think
culture, yeah.
But then also just being like, as a female, I just want a bloody good show about a female lead who probably can wield a sword. Am I asking for too much? Like, I don't think I am. Exactly. But The Witcher did provide that for me. I'll be honest. Like, The Witcher, like, I can't remember her name right now, but like the queen, she is a kick-ass woman who is in armor all the time and blood all on her, and I would feel very safe if I was in her
hello, bloody hell.
her bloody kingdom, even though I know it got rampaged and everyone died, but I would have been like, well,
Yennefer. That's it, Yennefer.
Oh yeah, the main witch.
Sorry, it's all coming back to me now. Yeah, no, it's definitely something that needs to be addressed. I mean, if you think of a culture, I know I keep going back to Japanese culture, but and Chinese,
they are the most like out there.
So but their history just goes way back. I mean, that could be a bit of an issue with their other cultures. Their historical references might not be as rich, and that could be a reason why things aren't drawn from them. But if you look at Japanese culture and everything with their samurais and all that, it's so much to it. And I think
I know there are shows there that are massive, and some Western like people watch them. I think in America,
Mulan and Mulan. That's the only thing I can think of. But there's Disney washed.
Oh yeah, definitely. It'd be interesting to see the new Mulan film.
Yeah, 100%.
going on, I kind of hopefully do hope it gets commissioned just for a second series, and then I weirdly hope that's it, just because it does leave it in a bit of a I need this wrapping up,
sorted.
Yeah, like it wraps a lot of things up, but like not enough that to say this is meant to be the sorry, spoiler again, this is the origin of how she becomes a lady in the lake. It is not ending with that. It's just like she's not there yet. I need a little bit more to really get her there. Well, actually, don't you watch it and come back to me and tell me how you feel about it. But you know what, I'm you know, we end with, you know, there's like, I think there's going to be an Arya and the Hound situation in series 2. Yeah, I will not disclose who with. You know, I think interesting context happened, but I think for me, you honestly could have changed the name of every single character and it would have still been the same story, and I would not have linked it to Arthur at all. So I don't understand why they've done that. They could have, honestly, I'm just saying, Arthur could have been called Ben, and I wouldn't have gone, hang on, is this meant to be Arthur? Because Merlin is just a wizard. Well, that's a very normal thing to be in fantasy. Merlin could have been called Frederick. So, yeah.
Freddie
for
a nickname.
So yeah, I think that's we'll see how it goes for series 2. Hopefully it is open, because I have seen a few other articles saying about this, opening it up for the fact that we need better female representation, we need better representation of people in colour in fantasy. 100%. Game of Thrones has already had there was many articles about Game of Thrones on that front.
It opened that book of can of worms, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's a good can of worms to open up, especially in the way that we are right now. You know, Black Lives Matter is still going strong. Well, it's not, well, I say going strong. The movement's still happening, and it still needs to be fought. America just seemed like we were watching them like a lab experiment right now. We're just going to see
100%.
if, and we'll see how this goes. But hopefully, LA, Hollywood, where the money is coming from, will understand that representation, please. And then
absolutely. I mean, even if it's just from the perspective of, for it not just being about representing because of the Black Lives Matter movement, and it's not really, even if put that aside and putting aside people's arguments say, you're just being too PC. No, put all that aside. It's the blimmin' stories that I think is just needs to be explored in film. I mean, am I stupid to think that film should be about exploring different stories, not the same whitewash shit? That's what it also comes down to. And if people concentrate on that, then hopefully it will happen.
100%.
And it's just the stories, man.
Please, can we put Arthur to bed now?
Yeah.
He's meant to be sleeping anyway. He's meant to be sleeping right now anyway, and he's meant to come back in Britain's hardest hour of need. And I'm like, if he's not awake right now, I don't know when else we will need him. Like he's not awake, guys. We should stop telling his story now. We need to forget about him. It's like manifesting. We need to forget about him 100%, and then he'll come back, and then we'll make another film about him coming back.
Exactly. And then that will sort that bit out. The remake or whatever. Reboot.
Yeah.
Which no one asks for. Yeah.
Anyway, I think that's if we keep talking, we'll just not be on cast anymore. So thank you for listening. To anyone who's listened, please comment if you want anything you want us to talk about. But I know the next episode is about Twilight. I already know it because it's being filmed. Because Midnight Sun is coming out at the start of the next month. My inner 2010 girl crush on Robert Pattinson has come back in full force.
Oh my god! What a babe! What a babe!
So,
such a superstar.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Well, goodbye, and thank you for returning, Katie.
Of course, my darling.
Always a pleasure talking to you.
Yes, you too, my darling. I'll always be here.
Thank you. Right, thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.